of that later. Oh, good. Perfect. Um, you'll see uh, the next iteration of that later in our agenda today, but that was it finally got approved back in October. Um, so a long sort of developmental process. We were not pushing for a premature closure. We wanted to make sure people had their voice. So there are a lot of edits that went into that process. Felt very collaborative and fruitful by the time we were done. Over the last, year, 6 months, we've been really focused on, okay, how do we get things in place to begin to make this shift from strategic planning to strategic implementation? So there are a number of documents that are a part of the strategic plan. One is the assessment, one is the visioning documents, and then there are quite a few others that are a piece of, okay, if we're going to move forward, here's kind of a game plan for doing that. And then number 4 is where we are today. Um, this is just a quick reminder of those goals and values, not that we need to look at it. Um, this next document, um, and I hope I put the permissions on these documents appropriately so you could get into them. So let me just open this next document, which is the goals and benchmarks. And
Uh,
by the
Mark,
yes, sir.
the link that was in the attachment is a draft of your agenda, not
Okay.
this document.
It does. Within, so thank you, Hank, so much. Within the agenda, if you click on this link in the agenda, it should take you to this document.
It takes
It
you to
takes us to a
the
different document.
of the
It's
agenda.
the wrong link. Yeah.
It's the
Okay,
wrong link.
we're gonna get this. Scott's gonna get that fixed while we are, or Jocelyn already has a plan. You're
Okay.
fixing it, Jocelyn? Is that what you're telling me? Thank you, Hank, for paying attention. We put that in there just to see who was checking Facebook and who was really paying attention. So, Hank, you get the prize. So here's what we've done. We've taken the last October, the goals and benchmarks that were approved, and in this document, in the sort of grayed out letters, that's an update on what happened getting us to this point. Okay. Then the next section are what we are proposing as a goal for 2028 and then a benchmark for 2026. So the way this process works, we set it up so that you're always thinking 3 years out and with a 1 year benchmark to lead you toward that 3 year goal. So we like to say the 3 year goal is aspirational and the 1 year benchmark is achievable. We know we can get there. And it's that whoever said, we just want to keep making progress and not lose our momentum. So what this allows us to do is come back every year and say, okay, let's take stock of how far we got and then make a plan for what we're going to do to move forward. So you'll notice there's some similarities between the two. So we won't walk through this whole thing because we're going to leave you with the assignment of reviewing this and getting back to us with any feedback, concerns, questions, suggested edits that you might have. You'll notice in this proposed section, and I'm going to try to make this, that at the end of each one of the benchmarks, it names the committee responsible to move that particular item forward. And so just for grins to let you see what this process, what this report looks like. The first goal area was the goal of receiving new life. And what we said was by 3 years from now, we wanted 5 congregations to complete a needs assessment and complete a revitalization process sponsored by the presbytery or one of its partners. Um, so in 2025, the goal was a revitalization process for interested churches has been designed. Um, and anything that has an underline under it is a link, and it will take you to the document that the strategic planning team developed. All of those are in draft form. They're all in an iterative process, which will be continue to be built out. The progress of that is the Town Square Collective, and that's the University of the Ozarks, Philip Blackburn. They have completed a cohort with 4 congregations in the presbytery. And through the presbytery's partnership with Town Square Collective, there's a process in place, particularly for rural churches right now, to claim their identity as churches of Jesus Christ in their community. So we have, yes, we've drafted a process, but there's also been progress happening with our partner organization, Town Square Collective. So that's what has happened with the 2027 goal. In the 2028 goal, what we're suggesting is, again, we're pushing 1 year out, that by this time, 10 congregations will have participated in an intentional process, again, led by the presbytery or one of its partners. We don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to create all the programs ourselves to help churches grow in vitality, sustainability, and mission. So now these are the ones that I will be last to the mast to accomplish, okay? The first one is churches in the presbytery interested in launching a vitality building process in the coming year have been identified. We've already done a survey that has allowed churches to say, yeah, we're interested in this. Now the I&I committee is going to reach out to them and say, okay, do you want to do this in the next year? That's what we want to get done there. The second proposed benchmark is if once we do sort of an assessment of everything that the Town Square Collective is doing, we want to identify, are there additional offerings? Are there gaps there that need to be offered by the presbytery in addition to what Town Square Collective is doing? And then the third one is the Ministry Imagination game plan has gotten updated to reflect the reality of those first two. So let me take a breath. You're going to read through all the content, but I want to make sure you have a concept of how this thing is laid out so that when you look at the rest of it, you'll be able to click on the links. And Jocelyn, while we're doing this, thanks to Hank's nudging, I feel nervous that maybe we haven't given permission to all of the links on here. So if you have time while I'm
gonna work on that, but I'll also text Leslie.
Oh,
Carmichael.
that'd be great. Okay. Okay. Questions or comments, concerns about the way this is laid out before we give that to you as an assignment to tend to. Am I hearing you say all seems straightforward, makes sense? Okay.
It looks like a lot of the work is going to be done by I&I and COM.
Well, and thank you for saying that, Dick. What we've tried to do in laying out these committee responsibilities, and this is where we want your input. Here's the analogy I'm using. In a nonprofit board, for example, the staff is responsible for the operation, and the board is responsible for things like strategy, fundraising, vision, that sort of stuff. You all have committees that are plenty busy managing the current operation. And those committees will be involved in this process, but we're not expecting them to drive the process. So if there's a need to get their approval or get their engagement or to have them, as we go through this, you'll see there's some assignments in terms of making contacts. We want to leave most of the initiative taking to I&I and the strategic implementation team. That's kind of the idea. So you'll see, yes, Richard, most of the time you're going to see one of those two as the driver. rather than expecting Leslie to add this as another thing to worry about on her list, we'll worry about calling Leslie and say, Leslie, when you're doing those conversations with individual churches, can you ask these 3 questions? But we won't expect Leslie to try to keep up with this whole list. Leslie, I just used your name in vain. Does that, your thumbs up, be okay. Sarah's here. Sarah, welcome to the party. Sarah, we did have a chance to check in for everyone to say how they see their role in this process and their name and what they dream would happen because we've done this over the coming year. Would you be willing to do a quick check-in?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I apologize. I was a little late. I had to help with childcare for my partner, so I apologize. I'm Sarah Lear. I'm the transitional youth and young adult developer for the Presbytery. And my dreams, Mark, is that what you want to know? My dreams of this process?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm just really grateful that this is a continuation of that wonderful meeting we had at Ferncliff. I refer to that often of bringing all those voices into a room. And it's been exciting to see that I know Jocelyn and the team have been really hard at work of getting many, many voices together for this. So my dream is that we continue to expand and ask small churches where they are in this process, because they're at the core of, who we are. So, and then, just with youth and young adult ministry, my dream is that we find different creative, collaborative ways to incorporate the youth and young adult outside of our kind of mini events that we do, but that we expand those opportunities for youth and young adult to be leadership development and include their vision on what we do in the Presbytery level. So that is my hope, to bring younger voices into this in the larger picture.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to the agenda. If there are no other questions about this document, you'll have time on your own to read through it and send us questions that you've got. We have dropped into this agenda Scott's cell phone number and my cell phone number and both of our email addresses should you need us. Thank you for click this link for real. There you go. Thank you, Jocelyn. In terms of the way the goals are broken out, this all Jocelyn presented at the Presbytery meeting. They're in 4 categories: receiving new life, deepening our financial health, repurposing of property, and building capacity and culture. That last one is the longest one in here. It's just a lot of ensuring that our infrastructure is in place so that when we try to do these things, we don't sink the boat. So in that last one, the largest one, there's small church support, culture building, innovation, and leadership cultivation. So just to give you a scope of how we got here. Any comments, questions about that before we move on to our work? All feels okay. I'm going to assume it all makes sense. So yeah, we just want to, one of our values in ministry architects is dumb persistence. We're just going to continue nudging things forward, keep asking the same questions, keep not let things sort of fall off the radar unless we the Presbytery intentionally chooses to do that. There's a great book by the Presbyterian pastor Eugene Peterson called A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. That's all we're doing, just taking little steps. We're not trying to do heroism. We're not trying to make anybody get a hernia because of this. This is just taking steps forward together. In terms of what to expect, some general, expectations. Much of especially the new things we're doing will be driven by the Innovation Incubation Committee. There's a good chance, Richard and John and I met and Jim met this week or last week, I guess it was, because today's Monday. We may divide that up into, new church development, incubating new ministries, though could be four different subcommittees on innovation and incubation. But that committee, as Richard so aptly noted, is going to drive a lot of this. Other committees, the way this is structured is that other committees will work in collaboration with I&I and with strategic implementation to gather responsive feedback. And again, we're trying to not load up. A lot of times the reason strategic plans get stuck is that the strategic planning committee spends a lot of time reaching out to other committees and saying, have you done it? Have you done it? Have you done it? Have you done it? And it creates frustration for everybody. And so the whole idea is strategic planning and I&I will really drive the accomplishment of things, working in collaboration alongside other committees in a way that hopefully puts wind in their sails and doesn't put a lot of weight on their shoulders. Scott and/or I will be meeting with the various committees throughout this coming year, certainly on a very regular basis with I&I and their sub areas. We anticipate meeting a good bit with youth, young adults, and campus ministry, and getting that. I know the committee there probably needs some more folks on it, but we're just going to try to, help with that process. The Committee on Representation doesn't exist, is not populated at this point. So we're going to help, strategic planning team is going to help find ways to get that thing populated. And conversations with Town Square Collaborative will continue. Then as needed, again, we're just not trying to load up regular meetings for you, but we do think there are going to be times when a conversation, Hank, with, me or Scott with finance administration about something in this process is going to be helpful. And COM and CPM, kind of the same thing. And our general pattern is going to be, we're going to try something, we're going to work the plan, and when the plan doesn't work the way we expect, we're going to pivot and we're going to take a next step. One of the big challenges we've discovered in the implementation of strategic plans is that we expect them to always work, and that almost never happens. So we expect them to, work about 30% of the time. What will work, we believe, is the process of continuing to pivot, continuing to iterate on the direction we're trying to go. Then one other thing, I think I've identified the difference between this work and the work already going on in operational committees is that we're going to really, I&I and strategic implementation are going to lash their self to the mast of these goals and benchmarks. They're not going to be, for the most part, making new stuff up to do. They're going to just accomplish the things that are on this goal list. The work of the committees will continue to be to manage the ongoing scope of your committee's work, as you have been. And then we'll come alongside you with support, suggestions, questions, ask you to edit something, ask you to give feedback on, do you think this makes sense? What doesn't work about this? Questions, wonders about that? Great. I'm hearing my voice talk a lot, and it's not as fun as listening to the groove. Okay, our next step. Everybody's going to review the proposed version of the goals and benchmarks and reach out to Scott or me. Scott is actually going to come down to Arkansas on September 17th to meet with the I&I committee to get their progress, their process sort of boosted forward. Then we're going to immediately begin to reach out to and begin to focus on these three, in addition to I&I and strategic planning. And then we're going to gather for an on-site sometime later in the fall at a date to be determined. So let me just take the screen off and see. Does this feel like the sort of expectations of where you thought we were going? What do you think we're missing? since we're a little bit early, I mean, we're done with our agenda. Since we're early, we could go through those goals and benchmarks if you want, but Hank is ready for us. Talk to us, Hank.
I guess my biggest concern, and maybe there is fleshed out in that document more, is typically we've got a 1-year goal. What are the baby steps that we're going to do to get to that 1-year goal? The action plan is what I would call it.
Yeah.
So not the big, it's a big step to get to the 1 year. What are the little steps we got to do to make sure we get to the 1 year?
That's great, Hank. Thank you. And I'll take a shot at that. And then Jocelyn, you're nodding, so you may have something to add. Yeah, our thought is that those 1-year goals are like, if we're hiking, that's like a base camp. And we are trying to get to that next spot. We know that on the way, we're gonna come up with all kind of obstacles that we didn't expect. So we're not going to map out exactly how we're going to get there. We're going to just say, there's the summit. Now your committee is going to figure out how to get us there. And when we come up against an obstacle, Scott and I are your Sherpa, and we've traveled this before, and we can say, okay, here's how we can adjust to get us there. But our mission is to get us to that summit rather than, Presbyterians tend to be big on writing action plans that get filed away and never get done. And our thinking is, let's name the place we're getting to, and then let's get there. I can say that because I'm Presbyterian, but Scott can't say that. How's that feel, Hank?
We will see. I guess I am more accustomed to, if you don't have the steps, it's hard to have accountability along the way. And you all of a sudden get to the end of the year and it's like, well, we thought somebody, was carrying the pitons that we're going to need to climb the ice ridge out there and the ladder to cross the crevice, and all of a sudden we get to the end of the year and realize that we didn't have any of that stuff with us.
Yeah. Well,
So
yeah,
that's still my concern, is how do we make sure that we're creating those steps to get, I know where the goal is at the end of the year. How do we make sure we're following steps to get there?
Jocelyn, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, Hank, I think what we've done so far, and if you have better suggestions, we would love that, is in collaboration with the committee that it most makes sense for that particular goal. We've kind of designed those per item. So for example, I met with COM last year and said, if the goal is to really have representatives from the Presbyterian meeting with every congregation with under 20 members on a Sunday, how do we best do that? And they said, well, we have this pre-existing system of liaisons. This is a piece of it that we can take. And then we looked at I&I's description of what that committee might take on. And we said, okay, here's a piece that they might need to be a part of. And so I would say for most of that action planning that's being done per goal with the committee, that goal makes sense to be done with. And as strategic planning team, we've been mostly saying, how do you best see this? How can we support you in doing that? But we've left that expertise up to the folks who are most tied in with particular objective.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you getting feedback from the committees or whoever you're working with to where they're giving an action plan? Or is it, oh yeah, we've got something working in the background that nobody knows what is? My struggle with
I've been getting pretty
nonprofits.
good
and
updates. I mean, I'll shout out COM. COM's been doing great on letting us know what they've done to accomplish those things. We also had like a particular person on strategic planning whose job it was to report back what COM was doing. So there's part of that we need a little bit, somebody from that committee to say, yep, this is what we've got going on or not. We've had a little bit more trouble with some of the work that have that most logically go with a committee that either is just now existing or doesn't yet exist, because we don't feel like we can create all the action steps without the people who are going to be carrying that across the finish line.
And the other question, I guess, is like Jane, I am brand new on the bus here.
Mhm.
So how do we have continuity when we all of a sudden end up with new people on the bus?
Yeah, Hank, that if I could just jump in for a second too, that's a great point. So, and that's affecting a couple of different committees, and admin is one of those, and I&I is another, and they're all completely new. And so, I think part of it is built, if I understand it correctly, it is built to empower these committees to come up with the steps to get to a goal, but also be open to feedback if that goal's not realistic for what we can do in this time and place, and so to modify the goal so that something happens in 2026. But the long range, hope-filled or optimistic message out of all of this is, those job descriptions for the two executive type people team are built that they have responsibility to each of these specific committees to get these goals done, and they're the ones that will help shepherd each committee along as needed to make sure that these goals are being reached, and that will be the accountability piece. Unfortunately, it's a transition on top of a transition in some of those cases, so it might be a little slow to get up and running.
Well, which brings the question up. You're obviously the transition of one of those roles. Who is holding the accountability for the other role?
Jim is doing both. So essentially, Jim is holding both of those roles at this point. Is that fair, Jim? You just got frozen while
No, I was thinking about that. I was like, we're not sure about the effectiveness of that, the efficaciousness of that, but it is two being split into, or one being split into two, and we're doing the best we can in the way that's structured right now.
Hank, I would also add that as you read through the goal document, what you'll see is that there are quite a number of game plans that actually are designed to be action steps to implement a plan. They're not, they may not be all steps to achieve the particular goal, but we do have some action steps in those plans. And we actually, we have drafted these goals, reading through our minds, do we think that there's going to be any problem achieving this goal in the next year? And our answer was no. We can achieve this in the next year. And again, Scott and I will take, we feel responsible to help lead this process for you to get those goals achieved. Second thing I would say about continuity is that this document becomes your continuity document. This says it's not a new team coming in and making up a whole new plan. This helps guide the presbytery as a whole in a single direction. So, I think the proof is in the pudding. And so I think we have another meeting in 3 months and we see how we're doing. And if you say, I told you so, then we'll make adjustments. But I'm pretty confident we're going to make some progress on these.
I think I'll say from our experience on COM, our in-person retreat last December, Jocelyn came and talked about some of these goals. We identified 3 of them that really specifically matched with some of the work that we were already doing or work that we felt we were called to. And so there are teams set up for each of those. And with an idea that this work is going to go beyond where any of those teams may still be serving on the COM. And so tried to sort of set up that structure so that then when whoever rotates off the COM, someone new rotates on and steps into that role, so that hopefully it's not person driven, personality driven, but that we continue to have those goals. And so far we've had great support from Jocelyn and the rest of the committee, with getting some wisdom there, and from Jim and the staff. So far it has worked well, for us. We'll see once we get to the end of 2026 if we can check mark our 2026 goals. But it has worked well so far for us.
And yeah, and I just want to add to what I said earlier, is that's the reason that I really advocated to have the staff on here, because these goals are broken out, and there are areas in which the staff is, connected right now, and whether we're in an unpopulated committee or we don't know how to, certainly all the staff is available. They're informed now on all this and can help, Julie with the mission of the church, Sarah with youth, me with admin or whatever, to help a little continuity until we get to this thing gets full blown. So we're available as resources to help plot action steps as well.
That's great. Richard, I think you had your hand up a minute ago. Am I remembering that right?
I think the moment passed.
Okay, great. Great.
I mean, yeah, I am encouraged by the enthusiasm of the staff. And when you say this, Jim, when you were saying that the staff has all been briefed on this, I look real quickly because I'm looking at the group picture and a lot of nods. That gives me some confidence. We're not going into totally uncharted waters, Hank. That there people know some stops along the way that we can make it to on this climb. So that's all.
Thank you. Other questions, wonders, concerns? Would you like to go through the rest of the goal document since we have time, or would you appreciate the gift of a meeting getting over early?
If you don't answer, he's going to keep the meeting going long. So
let's continue and expedite that and still get through early. How about that?
Why don't we take 10 minutes? We'll still be done 30 minutes early, and we'll kind of whip through the rest of the goal document from a high level perspective. And that'll give you something to play with. And I'm sure you're all going to rush out and spend your 30 minutes that you would have been in this meeting reviewing that document. I can't imagine that you'd have anything else you'd want to do. Okay, here we go. Let's return to this document. So as our second area was deepening financial health. So again, you can see in the grayed out, that'll give you an update on what actually happened, what the goal was, and the progress that was made. The 2028 is that by 2028, we want to have a clear fundraising plan, and we want to have received a $100,000 grant from somebody. You may say, well, how are we going to do that? Well, Town Square Collective has received, I don't know what the number is, but it's not an insignificant, it's 7 figures. And the first number is not 1. So we think if there's a plan for how we're going to do some grant funding, that can happen. So the whole idea is that for 2026, we develop a fundraising plan, and with administration and finance, we'd all agree about what that might look like. The second one is, so all these that are underlined, those are documents that are already drafted. And then the second one is naming a single missional priority for the program year. There was some energy around, can we, rather than, looking at 20 things at a time, could we as a presbytery get excited about one project together for the year? Could we, maybe it's disaster relief, or maybe it's a hunger thing, or who knows what it is, and then dedicate some of the already existing Presbyterian offerings, things like the Joy offering or the Pentecost offering, or those sorts of things. So that's the one around fundraising. Revitalizing church property. We just realized there are a number of churches that we've considered choice point churches that are they got a decision to make. They can probably not afford to continue in their current property for another 10 years. And so, you know, what a lot of places unfortunately do is just sell it to the highest bidder, and there's really no thought to how it affects mission or the community, or you know, how it might be a long-term resource to the church. So the goal is that by 2028, we'd have five churches with properties that have been supported by the presbytery to repurpose their properties in ways that increase mission and contribute to ongoing financial health. So that's the 3-year goal. The 1-year goal would be, let's talk to these choice point churches that have been identified, find out which ones want to be involved in a process like this, and begin working a preliminary process for helping those churches repurpose their property. And this is a growing field in the church across the country, who find themselves with churches that were built, you know, often before automobiles. And so there are a growing number of great models of ways to repurpose property. So we have already created a property assessment questionnaire and a property opportunity process. That document is linked up in the previous area there. Capacity building, the first area of capacity is small groups. This gives you an update. So you'll notice 2025 in progress, 2025 in progress. So we have redesigned those goals with the goal of in 2028, we'd like to see 25 churches have benefited from the work of Town Square Collaborative. You know, what we realize is they've already got a really wonderful, well-funded process in place. And instead of us trying to create something parallel and competitive, let's help support, connect churches in the presbytery to those resources that are already existing. The next one is that we just keep in regular contact with our smaller churches who are most likely to feel like the presbytery doesn't care about us. So that's the conversation that Jocelyn and Leslie were having. And you'll notice these are the strategic implementation team in consultation with. The first one is the coordination team. The second was with COM and presbytery staff. Now with innovation, we had a lot of benchmarks around that. And you can see the updates there. So the first one is around the incubation process. We've drafted a process for incubating new expressions of ministry. And so the whole idea is let's begin to implement some of that. The next one's new church development. Just reaching and saying, can we get 2 new worshiping communities launched in the next 3 years? And so in this year, we just want to identify where's the place that it makes the most sense to do a new worshiping community. Then there's this question of metrics. One of the things that came up in the visioning retreat was it's not just about buildings and budget and how many people are sitting in the pews. So are there other ways to measure vitality besides those traditional measures? And Phil Blackburn has volunteered to help guide that process. He's done a lot of sort of work with a consultant named Gail Rendell, who's written books about this. And anyway, but that's what that one is. Then grants, we currently have a grant giving process that you can find on the website. The whole idea is that we want to align the grant giving with these priorities. So the benchmark for this year is that the grant process has been updated to ensure that they align with the priorities that we have in our strategic plan. With young adult ministry, the 2028 goal is that we've got a thriving young adult ministry established, and structures are in place to support that. And we've got a preliminary plan for a young adult ministry game plan, and that gets to be implemented. And then culture, culture developing, one of our great tools for culture building is going to be the sharing of stories. So, Julie, this is where we're going to lean on you to collect, the great stories of things happening. You'll see your position is there on the A item. The next benchmark is a game plan for sharing those stories has begun to be implemented. And then again, culture also has to do with the diversity of our presbytery. And so we've drafted a game plan for diversity inclusion. We'd look at updating that and beginning to implement that. That's going to include getting a committee on representation in place. Then proposed, the next one is, making sure we're using our endowment funds in a way that reflects the strategic priorities. So it may be updated, it may not be updated, but the whole idea of strategic planning, strategic implementation would review this and then bring any questions they've got to finance administration and see if any changes are needed. The final one, leadership cultivation. The whole idea is most of our models for leadership cultivation historically have leaned into the preparing of full-time installed ordained pastors. But I think if I remember this right, y'all can correct me, less than half of the churches in the Arkansas Presbytery actually use that model. So we got to begin thinking about different ways of staffing congregations. And right now we're using CREs and installed pastors. There are about 8 other possibilities that have a pretty well-worn path that we can consider. So that's kind of what this one's about. The next one related to that is building the leadership pipeline of all the way from, young youth all the way to senior citizens, and where are the places where people are most likely to get engaged in leadership. The next one is the emotional and spiritual health of our paid congregational leaders, whether they're pastors or CREs or our program staff. And we just want to make sure we're doing something to lean into that. And then finally, a robust training program for certified ruling elders. And again, strategic team along with CPM with support from TSC, because there probably are some connections with the training that Phil is already doing. So that just gives you a quick look at the documents, that you're going to be looking at more closely. We covet your input, your questions, but that's going to be our guidebook for the next year, and we're going to try to hit these targets by November 1 or Halloween, depending on what your holy days are. All Saints Day or All Hallows Eve, either one would be fine. Okay, we are at the 1 hour point, and the gift of 30 minutes of time is right in front of you. Would you like to receive that gift? This is like communion. You cannot take the gift. You can only receive it if you want to receive the gift.
That's a trick question.
Okay. Hearing no objections to ending early, Jocelyn, I will let you say a few final words. Well, I'm sorry. I know I'm eating into our 30 minutes. Jocelyn has been an amazing guide and leader and enthusiastic, relentless, bird dogging. She just won't let this thing go. And she's just a joy to work with. And so thank you, Jocelyn, for all that you have done. We could say similar things about Jim. Jim has, stepped into a place that was, a lot of moving pieces, and I can tell he's won your hearts already. So thank you, Jim. Okay, Jocelyn, now I'll let you say things now that I've said nice things about you.
Well, my things were that I was asked to close in prayer, but before I do that, if you, as you're looking through this document, have any questions about the work that has been happening or the progress note, or you have any questions about the documents that are linked there, like the game plans, I am really happy to talk with any of you about where we've been and where we're going. I can definitely, at the very least, point you to the person who can answer your questions. For some of these pieces, also have Julie and I both have the results of the Presbytery-wide survey that we did last year to get some information about our congregation. So if you need any of that data, please see me or Julie. We can get that to you. And if you have kind of wonderings about what it might take to get to some of these goals, I can talk you through what conversations have already happened. I would love to best position all of you to implement all of these things to come. So those are my few words. Thanks, Mark. Let us all close in prayer if we could get into a comfortable praying position wherever you are. Gracious God, we are grateful for the chance to take the time to think about what it is that you are calling us to do as a presbytery and who you are calling us to be. We ask your help and your guidance and that spirit that brings us perseverance when things are boring or hard, so that we can continue to be your hands and feet in the expanses of Arkansas and in all of our congregations and for all of our leaders. We ask all of these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank y'all so much for joining us. Go enjoy your 27 extra minutes.
Nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.